Hey everyone, welcome to this will be episode number 3 of the Obery Project's Criminal Justice series. And this series is really just recounting everything that I've been through, everything I've seen or experienced, in part so that it can help you understand why I got to the point where I am now, studying the things that I do now, trying to figure out the things that I'm trying to figure out now, because I spent at least a baker's dozen years of my life just wasted, more or less trying to dull the pain of all kinds of problems with the world, with myself, and the way things worked, that I was just trying to always numb, with the drugs. Now, the funny thing is, I never had really an issue regarding any substance like use or anything before the opiates started. In fact, when I was younger, and I was a musician, I was in a number of different bands, I was always the guy who was the most adamant about nobody getting high, like high as in on pot, before practice, during practice, drinking, and no, like any drugs or anything like that. And really, I only did, like, there was some partying and all that. That was pretty much it. I was really, as far as like drugs and deviant behaviors and things like that, was not abnormal. But, then a series of injuries and other things happened in my 20s, which led to mostly a string of doctors' prescriptions, which after a while of things like that, when you start finding out that those medications can actually make you feel better psychologically, and then you start getting your brain, your emotions, your mind starts getting rewired. And this happens both to people who develop these addictions via doctors, and a huge majority of people I've known developed them, started them through doctors' treatments. Not everyone, but a lot of them. And, and then they end up in really bad circumstances, and they didn't necessarily go seeking this, but I mean, even street drug users or alcohol users, let's say alcohol and drug substance abusers, they're not going out necessarily looking to develop some kind of a life of hardship and deviance. And, when you get into a drug that is so demanding on a person, like opiates, heroin, and even, really strong prescription opiates, it's a rough taskmaster. And, it really demands a lot from the people who use it when you're in an addiction cycle. It's the reason why people who, in general, are, I would say, pretty decent people, end up absolutely untrustworthy. It's simply because of the demands being made on them by the drugs. So let's see. I was talking last time about a situation where the detective in Valparaiso wanted me to come in, and I think he used some tactics to get a confession out of me. So anyways, after that, it was only a couple of weeks, and there was a warrant sworn out on me. That warrant, okay, some other things happened in the meantime And my dad, I was living in his pole barn. There was this finished room in this pole barn, and I was staying there. And there was a situation where something was missing, and he believed I took it, and I did. And there were at least a few times that I took things from him. The whys to that are, they go kind of deep, so I won't get into them. But I did. And I don't know that he really wanted me to go to jail necessarily. He was really angry. So he calls the cops. Well, thing is, he tells them when they get there, because he was really mad. He calls them, they get there. He was like, well, he's like, I don't want to press charges or anything. So because he didn't want to press charges against me, that was fine. Like, they weren't going to seek the charges. Which, that was kind of surprising, because the thing is, you'd be surprised how often the state picks up charges even if a party isn't going to press charges. And sometimes that party, if they don't want to press charges against the accused, they really have to fight and tell the state, well, I'm not going to be your witness. I'm not going to do this, that, or the other. If he had given them a detailed statement and so on and so forth, sometimes the state will just use that to prosecute you. The state, let me tell you this. This state doesn't really care about the victim. The state is doing business. The state is doing business. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen cases where there was a victim, maybe a victim of a theft, victim of battery, you name it, whatever, that the state is the one who prosecutes. Like 100% of the time. It's the state. If you go, you'll go to your first appearance in court, and the prosecutor will get up there and they will have to read the charge, and they'll be like, man, they'll name off letters and numbers, and they're giving the case, and they'll say state of. So in almost every one of my situations, it was Indiana. They might say state of Indiana versus, and they'll give your name on something, felony, this, that, or misdemeanor, this, that, whatever. It's the state. It's the state. Now that's important that it's the state, first off, because, and this really needs to be saved for another video concerning how the state, in the course of doing business, violates the rights of those they are prosecuting. The state is doing business. If you get into a court and you hear a charge that says this and that, state versus, they're doing business. Now, they will prosecute real, actual crimes, like common law crimes. Common law, let's just, we're going to operate under the assumption that in the United States of America, common law is in effect. So that constitutional law, common law. So the way you have to go about committing a crime is you have to violate another sovereign. You have to defraud another sovereign. You have to do something criminal in the way of violating, harming, defrauding another sovereign, because you're supposed to be sovereign. That's what everybody thinks. It's not so. But they will prosecute common law cases. Assault, that's a common law case. Murder, that's a common law case. Offenses against various victims, different kinds of offenses like, molestation and rape and all that. That's common law. Certain types of theft, that's common law. So those kinds of cases, they will prosecute and try those under that sort of common law. That they're going to apply a color of law, but they're going to do it in the sense of common law, where there is an injured party, corpus delicti. But oftentimes what will happen, and I've seen this, it happened that one time with my dad. It happened another time with a department store that I was caught boosting from, who dropped charges. In fact, they had sent me a letter while I was in jail for that offense. They said, if you agree to pay this to us, we will drop charges. Now, I didn't have any way of doing that. However, if I knew then what I do now, I would have probably tried to find some way to simply pay it. It wasn't big. It was actually more like pay us for damages that we believe that you've incurred, which essentially would be like fees of the security officer and others that were involved in this. They obviously reclaimed their property. It wasn't damaged, so it wasn't huge. Essentially, they were like, you take care of these expenses that we believe that we've occurred because of damages, and we'll drop all the charges. Now, if I had known that, if I knew then what I knew now, I would have pursued that, and then I would have pursued basically forcing the state to drop those charges. When the second party is involved and they back out, they say they're done, they're not pursuing any charges, it's very difficult for the state to keep going forward. But oftentimes what they'll do is they will pursue charges whether or not the victim is aware that, let's just say it was a domestic, and one of the people in the domestic was arrested and one wasn't, and they decided, the one who wasn't, that there's no way they're pressing charges against this person, so on and so forth. Most of them don't understand that if the state doesn't have a victim, they really can't proceed. Sorry, I bit my lip. Can't proceed. But one of the problems is at first appearance, and I do want to talk about that. Probably not now, but very, very soon, because it's first appearance. They get you into first appearance typically within 1 to 3 days of taking you into custody. They get you into first appearance really fast. Now, is this because they're pursuing some modicum of justice regarding your rights? Or is it because at first appearance, all you have to do is say one word in that appearance, besides for affirming your name, and they've got you. They've got you in the due course of what's going to play out as them doing business, which is your omnibus, and then you've got forward after that. Your omnibus is essentially, it's after your first appearance. It's going to be basically charges, how you're going to proceed. You do have opportunities to ask for certain things at that. Omnibus is usually 30 days on a low charge, sometimes faster if it's misdemeanor. If it's a really big charge, your omnibus could be 90 or more days after your first appearance. So this time, picked up in LaPorte. They had no victim that was going to press charges, but they had a warrant for Porter County. So they took me in. They took me down to the police station, courthouse, jail. It's all kind of together in LaPorte. LaPorte has this beautiful old courthouse, by the way. It's really something. I'm supposed to get back down to LaPorte soon. I'm going to take a lot of pictures of it. It's really something. They still have the underground tunnels and everything leading to the jail and all that, which is kind of across the way. Police station and jail and other government offices are in a newer brick building across the way. So they took me in there. They're asking me questions. What do you know about things going on in LaPorte? And I'm telling them I don't know anything about things going on in LaPorte. I just stay here. I do all of my business elsewhere. I have no idea. My typical thing with them is, again, and I didn't have to talk to them, but people don't realize they don't have to talk to them. I didn't have to talk to them. What they'll do is, again, like the first detective, they will, and this is just standard, they're going to be very nice, like your friend. They don't want to hurt anybody. They want to get to the bottom of whatever it is they want to get to the bottom of. They're working in the best interests of everybody, and we don't want to see anybody get hurt, and, that attitude. And, for me, they brought me in, gave me a cup of coffee. Do you need anything? You want a cup of coffee? Sure, absolutely, a cup of coffee. I needed a cigarette, but that stopped years ago. So anyways, yeah, I didn't have to talk to him, but since I was talking to him and didn't know that I could have just told him, I'm sorry, I don't want to talk to you. I just told him, look, I just live here. And my problems are my problems, and I go and I do business elsewhere. And that's that. Okay? I'm an end user. I don't deal. I don't know any dealers. I can't help you. So basically, they just put me in a cell. It was holding. And I think I was there at least a full day. Porter County came pretty fast, but Porter and LaPorte County are right next to each other. Same thing with Porter and Lake County. You end up in one of those three counties, and your transport's probably going to be pretty fast. They go a few times a week. And sometimes they go pretty often. They might go every day if they've got a lot of people that have to go from one county to the other. Remember, that's one of the ways you end up in jail is you end up from another facility. You'll do your time in one county, and then when that's done, they're going to run a check, and I can't remember the letters of the check, but they'll run a check. And if you have outstanding warrants, those will come up. And when you're done with your time, you're not going to roll it up and leave at 6 a.m. When you're done with your time, they're going to let that county know that you're good to be picked up. And as soon as that county can, they're going to pull you out, and they're going to turn you over to them. You're going to get shackled up and so on and so forth. Anyways, so I must have sat there a day or so, and they bring me to Porter County. On that charge, I'd already talked to that detective, so that was, for as far as they were concerned, nobody needed to ask me anything. They brought me there, they booked me in. I was in holding for, let's see. Well, they had picked me up, that's right. I was picked up in LaPorte on a Sunday. They picked me up bright and early on a Monday. Porter County did, probably by lunch or before lunch, because a lot of their guys go out for transport Monday relatively early. They got some guys who take court in, because Monday's a big court day for everybody, and then you transport that go to different counties. It was somewhat early. They brought me into Porter County. I must have saw the judge, and this turned out to be the judge that I would go before over and over again for a few times after that. I think the next day I was in there for first appearance, And like I said, the prosecutor reads basically the code, numbers, all of that, and then they say state of Indiana versus my name, D felony theft. That's what the charge was. Such and such, so and so. Could you state your name? Do you understand the charges that were being placed against you? And that's where the problems start for everyone. For everyone. Because everybody thinks that, well, I listened to the prosecutor. I may not have understood all of the letters and the numbers and everything that they were reading. I did understand D felony theft. I did understand it's my name. And whether or not they're going to get me on it or whatever. I think I understood all of that. So when they say, do you understand the charges? And 99% of everybody says yes. And that's the beginning of the end. That is where you're now entirely at their mercy, because you don't know the nature and cause of the charge against you. You don't. But you're implying you do when you say yes. You don't specifically know what jurisdiction you're being charged in, but people assume they know the jurisdiction, but you don't. So this is something I would like to talk about more in another video. So anyways, in on that charge, it was like this is like first real felony charge, you know? I remember on that, I sat until my omnibus. My omnibus was a month off. Couldn't get out. D felony thefts. D felony period. And especially at that time, the bond was standard, like 1,000 or 1,500. It's your standard bond. Somebody's going to have to come up with that. So, sat for 30. Now, I was appointed a public defender. That's another problem. Public defenders in the public defender's office, and if they're acting in your interest. But again, another video. So I sat that 30, and then I went in. The public defender had come to see me prior, maybe a week prior, just going over everything. And my question to her really was, she just kind of went over, here's the case and everything, and everybody basically figured they got you dead to rights. They got a confession. The detective, he hands in his affidavit, he has a confession. So nobody's thinking that who knows which way it could go, So my question was, well, how do I get out of here? That's what I wanted to know. What can I do to get out of here? She says, well, at your omnibus, what we could do, they're only going to allow us a motion. One motion. Now, I don't know how true that is if you're only allowed one motion at your omnibus, but maybe. She said they'll allow us one motion. So she says, what I can do, I can motion for a reduced bond. She said, I think that they'll probably be okay with that. She said, it's your first felony, it's theft, you're from the area, even though you're living over in LaPorte, it's still close. She said, it doesn't look like you're a flight risk or anything like that. She's like, there's no way I'm going to get OR, which is own recognizance. That's like no money, you're released. You'll get that in bigger places that have a lot of traffic. They'll do a lot of ORs. She said, but we can probably get a reduction. So we went in. She argued for a reduction. They got it down to, it was pretty low. We went from something like 1,500. I think she got it down to like 350. I'm not kidding, 350. And, I'm trying to remember who came up with that, because I was like, immediately when I got back to the jail, I was on the phone. And honestly, I want to say that I did call my dad, and he put up that. It wasn't a huge amount. He or another party put that up, and I got out on bond. But when you get released, you're on pretrial release. Pretrial release is essentially, because you're in the meat grinder now, okay? You are doing business with the state now. As soon as you say you understand the charges, you are now doing business with the state. You are. It's contracts. You're doing business with the state. So you get that bond, and they're going to put you on pretrial release. Pretrial release is probation. I remember vividly the guard who released me when I got that bond. He was still there the last time I did any time there. He was still there, and really totally decent guy, because not every guard is a power hungry prick, or just, a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are. This guy was cool. But I remember vividly what told me. I got the bond. They told me to roll up. I rolled up, came out, dressed me out, took me to the door, the last big door. It's the moment of truth. When they take you to that, there's like a little table off over to the side. There's windows, two-way glass windows over to this side, that's main control. They're basically running everything in the jail. So when you would go in this jail and you would talk through the little louvered aluminum vent hole, you're talking to main control. This is main control. By the way, I had visited that place a few times before I ever started going to jail there, and I know why now. Half the time, probably more than half the time, these people in there, fucking pricks. To civilians just coming in there to maybe put money on somebody's books, check on something, whatever. A lot of them. I'll tell you, a lot of those guards end up in main control because they can't be out in population. Or they're connected and they can't be out in population because they have no respect. They don't treat inmates with respect. And there are, Porter County, I told you, a lot of the crime and everything else from Chicago, the South Side, spilled into Porter County. Oprah Winfrey had a lot to do with that, but it's not all her. And serious people come through Porter County now. It's not like it was years ago when they had the old jail, which was by the courthouse. It was a very, 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 very different jail. Back when, people could bring you in, they'd come visit you, and they could bring you in cartons of cigarettes from the outside. And the guard would just open the carton. They'd look at all the packs, make sure you hadn't, snuck them in something. And then they would give the person you came to visit, they would give them the carton of cigarettes. And I won't go into that. It was a different jail by then. By the time I started going to jail, Chicago had spilled over a lot, and it's not getting better there now. But a lot of these guards, these small town people who they aren't hard. These are not tough guys that work as guards. Not all of them aren't. Okay, but there are a lot, because they need a lot of guards, because they want to fill that jail up. They want to fill it up. They're doing business. They want to fill it up. When I was in there, the normal count was 450 or higher. And since I've been there, the last 10 years, they have opened another wing that was closed because of whatever seedy crap they did, and built it improperly and on a swamp, and it was sinking. They had to repair a bunch of stuff in one of the wings, satellites. So anyways, yeah, a lot of guys end up in main control because they're not respectful, and they get real convicts in there. They get real convicts that aren't going to put up with guards who are mouthy, And so what happens is, after some incidents where it appears that the guards can't be out there and interact with inmates with some level of decorum and respect, and there are a number of cases where they find that they can't interact with the female inmates, and I can tell you stories about that, but they'll end up in like main control or some other job. They take you out. The guy says to me when he's taking me out, it was in a way, it was very funny, because he knew, because some people in this jail already knew me. I told you, one of the guards that had worked there for years, probably still works there, I had gone to high school with. I knew him. I didn't just go to high school with him, like, we played in bands together and things like that back then. So, I'm sure that he knew who I was. He knew it was my first time and everything. It's easy to look at my paperwork and see that. He brings me to that door and he looks at me and he says, do not fuck this up. It was pretrial. And he's giving me the specifics, where you got to go, what you got to do, and you have to do it within a very short window of time from getting released, or you got problems. You got problems, and they'll put you right back in. So, anyways, yeah, and then, inevitably, since I did not stop, which is just insane. I guess when you think about it, when you look back, I was in for 30 days. 30 days, you're cleaned out. You probably will still have the cravings, especially if you're not mentally ready to be done. And there are guys who will go inside for a really long time. And I'm not talking about prison, I'm talking county. Because once you get to a lot of prisons, you're going to be able to get a lot of stuff you can't get in county. County time is really, really hard time, not because you may be facing certain dangers. Some big county jails, you will be facing a lot of the same dangers as in prisons. But county time, you're not getting out for rec. Not at any county jail I've ever been in. You're not getting outside. They do not take you outside. The whole time I was there, they don't take you outside. The only time you're going to get outside is when you walk, because you're shackled to a couple of other guys. You're walked from the van into the side door of the courthouse, and then when you're walked back out and into the van, that's the most you're getting outside. And if you fight a charge like I did for 14 straight months, I was lucky because I had gotten into inmate workers, and I got to go out a couple of times to mow the lawn or to do a few different like maintenance things, and I got some fresh air and some sunlight, but that was basically it. People in oranges don't get outside, ever. County time is really hard. Why? Why is county time so rough? Because I told you there's sensory deprivation. That's no joke. And if they put you in the hole, that's absolute complete sensory deprivation. All you get in there is a Bible. You can have a spiritual book, or if you have another religion, you can ask for a different, that book, your clothes, and I think you get your bed sheet. That was it. And they might have changed that too, because I knew a guy personally who had gone inside just a few months before my last arrest and incarceration. He had gone inside, and I hear a few days after he was arrested and taken inside that he was not doing good mentally, and probably acted, violently in some way or another. And I know the guy. It's totally believable. They put him in the hole. And you have, I think it was his bed sheet he used, because they'll give you a slip cover to put over these pathetic mats that you put on this hard steel bunk. I believe they said he took that thing, he was managed to either tear it and elongate it, or I don't know how he did it with just it, because it's like 8 foot long, and it's literally a slip cover, but it's really heavy material, and it's nasty, because when they do laundry there, just the junk they use for the detergent, after a while, it seems like this stuff is leaving a residue and everything just gets this sort of a nastiness to it. I mean, even after it's been cleaned. Anyways, he took that and either tore it or he used it, and he was able to thread it into the upper bunk, because even in the hole they got 2 bunks just in case they fill the place up. And I mean, yeah, they'll put 2 per cell in C5, the hole, if they need to. He got it around the top. He managed to get it around his neck in some way, and then drop his weight and keep himself dropped. Maybe he was able to wrap it tightly enough to where it wouldn't come loose. And he hung and killed himself in that cell. This is right before I came in. So, that was the last time. Anyways, yeah, they don't let you out. They don't let you out, and it's tough time. And they want it to be tough time. This is where I was going with that. They want it to be tough time because they want you to cop to a plea. The entire system is doing business. And they can't do good business with you if you're going to fight your case. If everybody in that jail, or everybody they're charging is able to either bond out or they end up in jail if they fight their case. If everybody in there is fighting their case, that's going to be a problem. They are not going to be able to do good, productive, efficient, lucrative business. It's not going to happen. So they want to do good business. Doing good business means that you're going to cop to a plea, you're going to cop to a guilty plea, and they have a whole system of how they'll start with one charge and what they want to give you as part of the charge, and that's the first offer. And it is basically they figure from the start, based on your charge, your record, and everything else, what they want to give to you and what they're most likely able to get out of you. And they might offer you right at the beginning a lot more. And, nobody's going to take that. If they do, they're insane. And they're not even going to let you plea one way or another for a certain amount of time. So for a certain amount of time, you're going to sit at county. County's doing business. County's making money. If you're in there for county, you're state versus, they're given a certain amount by the state per inmate per day. Money in. This particular jail also acted as federal hold. Federal hold they get a good deal more money for. Money in. If you are convicted and now you're sentenced to state time, so penitentiary, or maybe a work farm or something, but you're going down. That's what they call it. You're going down. Then you're going to earn them state pay, but you're now a liability. So a lot of times they want to get you out of there fast as they can. But your presence is making them money. And not just what they're getting from state or federal, or sometimes Porter County also acted as protective custody for other jurisdictions. Now, they're making good money off that too. Whenever they act as PC for another jurisdiction, they're getting paid pretty good for that too. And then they're making quite a bit of money off phone commissary. Big money off commissary because they feed you shit. And the same company, when I was in there, the same company subcontracted the kitchen and commissary. You tell me it's not a conflict of interest to have your guy who's running the kitchen, your private company that's contracted kitchen and commissary. Tell me it's not in your interest to put the biggest tool in there who is absolutely all his goal is to make absolutely sure that these inmates only get that 1,200 calories a day. So what? So that you're hungry all the time, and you gotta buy all of their very expensive items off commissary. And from everything I've been told, items are far more expensive, county level commissary, than they are when you go to prison. When I was in, last time I was in, a ramen soup comes in the plastic bag. We're not talking the cup or anything like that. In the plastic bag with a seasoning packet. A ramen was 85 cents county. It was 23 cents at that same time in prison. DOC. They're making money. They're doing business. So, yeah, it's crazy. I get out after 30 days. I was clean. Apparently I wasn't done. And you'll see, guys, they go inside for a long time. They're clean. They're not done. So, kept living that same life. Got picked up in Gary, Indiana, city Gary, because I had gone for a drug run. I was really sick, detoxing, when all this happened. I had kind of done a lot of Xanax to try to minimize how terribly difficult the withdrawals are from opiates. They're really unfun. They're not fun. They're very bad. And that was the problem. Because I had one associate that I knew who would oftentimes just give me these really strong Xanax, And so those you would use sometimes if you were using, you might use them to actually go to sleep. Because sometimes when you're using, it's very difficult to sleep. You don't want to go to sleep. Your body doesn't want to go to sleep. And you want your body to sleep. And then a lot of times, opiate addicts will use them to minimize the effects of withdrawal, because what it'll do is it'll just, if you take enough of it, it will make you pass out. It'll make you just, you'll be so out of it. But the problem is that the effects from that the Xanax can last a really long time. Really long time. And I managed to get a few things together and took this car, I had, the insurance had lapsed. Of course, because all of my money and everything else is going into, drugs. Took this car up to Gary, copped, so bought the heroin, and it was raw heroin, so the guy would bag certain amounts in just in little papers, not baggies, little papers. And did one of those, and those were pretty strong. It was pretty strong. And started back home after I did that one, and blacked out at the wheel because I was on Xanax, and now I had just done this really strong amount of heroin. Blacked out at the wheel. Blacked out. Wasn't going fast. It was in a little strip where the speed limit wasn't that fast anyways. And the car that I had, it wouldn't go that fast anyways, which is good. But somebody pulled out in a big, this is Gary. So Gary's, it's mostly black. And any, you know, and a lot of the cars there, they like bigger cars. They like cars like Cadillacs and Chryslers and, older big cars. Like, you know, there's this big thing where a lot of them would get Caprices and put them up on extra large tires and all that. So almost everything out there is like big cars. And I was driving a really small car. It was good on gas, and it was a stick shift. I mean, you could get like 1,000 miles out of a gallon of gas on this thing. So I black out, and somebody was pulling out of this one intersection, which didn't even have a business or anything there, but there's like a little tiny subdivision, you know, and they were pulling out on this, it was a highway. And I hit them right in the front, so just as they had come out, kind of like this. The driver wasn't injured. There's nothing like that. And again, this wasn't high speed. But I had because of that, three problems. I got the car, it was still running and everything, so I pulled it over to the side, so it was off the road, and made sure they were okay, and they said that they were calling the cops because you got to, you know, because it's an accident. And I thought to myself at that time, oh, crap. Because I knew I didn't have insurance, and I thought, oh, what's going to happen? So there was an abandoned, closed-down gas station right there. In Gary, Indiana, there's all kinds of abandoned, closed-down businesses, houses, everything else. It's a shit show. It's bad news. So I thought, I might go to jail. And I'm not thinking right. So I stash a couple of my bags in a place where I thought maybe they wouldn't find them, and they didn't. And I didn't suitcase them, which is, you know, sticking them up your ass. No, because I had nothing to wrap, you know. But I put them somewhere I thought maybe they won't get to, and they didn't. And there's a reason. So I go behind this abandoned gas station because I'm like, oh, I'm going to do another hit because they might arrest me. And I don't want to go to jail without doing a lot of dope so that I'm high for a really long time. And that's exactly how I thought at that time. So the problem was, and I meant to do this pretty quick, like just go back there, do it and come back out, because I wasn't trying to run or hide. Because the car was registered to me. Like, why would you? That's a bad idea. I mean, even not thinking right, I knew that was a bad idea. So I go around back, do my thing, come back. As soon as I come back, out the side, they got there like Johnny on the spot, which was so surprising because it's Gary police. I mean, they're not usually very fast. Because there's a lot going on in Gary, you know? I was shocked. And now here's the problem. Because I had walked across the street, I had parked the car, and it was an abandoned little area. So it wasn't in anybody's way or anything, you know? It still ran, you know? So I was able to drive it over there, park it. I just parked it. And I went behind the gas, so I just crossed this little side street, went behind the building, did my thing, and was coming back out from behind the building. These guys come pulling up, and they either had their guns or tasers drawn, and I'll be honest, I was too high to know whether they were guns or tasers. Didn't matter. I wasn't messing around. You know? And it's interesting, too, because, look, both of these guys were... no, one was black, one was white. There's a lot of white cops in Gary. I can tell you, typically, when arrested by black cops, they are typically not nearly as loud and aggressive and even as shitty as a lot of the white cops. But, you know, I guess there's different people in every... The white one was the loud one. The one who searched me, I might have been the white one. Okay, before they search you, especially if it's in Gary, they're going to say, like, is there anything in your pocket that's going to poke me? And I told him, because I don't want to, that could be a charge if you got something in your pocket like a hypodermic that could poke them. You know, I don't think you want to mess around with that. Whether you're going to hurt them or not, it could be a charge. And I didn't want to hurt them. I don't want to hurt people. I never tried to hurt anyone in all this, you know. Yeah, I told him. And I told him where. And he carefully made sure of, you know. And then they took me in. They didn't question me. They didn't question me at the jail or anything like that. And then I ended up in front of a judge for Gary City, you know, as a municipality, and copped a plea. Here's the problem. I went to jail because it was a triple infraction. And so they treat it like that. It's not just, I'm going to file a report and there's this, it was a triple infraction, and here's what it was. One, I ran a red light. Two, I didn't have insurance on the car. Three, and this was the problem, and this is, if I was thinking right, I would have done this. And I probably wouldn't have gone to jail. Three, I left the scene. Even though I just went across the street, I left the scene. It's important to stay by your vehicle in an accident, not go wandering off somewhere. They don't like that. So I got a triple whammy. And that's what ended me up in Gary City Jail. I was in Gary City Jail for good grief. How long was it? I don't even know how long that was. I know it was at least, my goodness, it was at least a few weeks. It was at least a few weeks. I was the only white guy that in that whole jail, the whole system. I was like the only white face I saw, except for one other guy came in for, like, him and his girlfriend came in for some kind of suspected such and such. I think it was a PC hold, which they do big time over in Gary. More than other places, they'll do like a real quick 24 or 48 hour PC hold. If they decide they can't really charge you with anything, we'll let you go. You're back out on the street. I was in that place for at least 15 days, memory serves. No shower. They didn't have one. They didn't give you one. If you were lucky, the guard might find some state soap that they kept around or something and give it to you, and you would have to do a complete bird bath in your cell at the sink/toilet. No towel, nothing like that. There's no blankets, nothing there. You froze. And I had a sleeveless, I had come up in a, it was warm outside. I remember. I didn't even have a t-shirt on. I had a vest, a denim vest at the time. that was just a sleeveless vest. I don't remember if I even had a t-shirt on underneath it, like a sleeveless t-shirt or anything. I froze in that place. Boy, they keep that. I told you about the bullpens, how they'd keep them like coolers for a reason. Whew, this place, man, it was cold. They kept this place cold. Anyways, I copped to a plea there of basically the three things they said. You know, you're here for. I did run a red light. I didn't have insurance. I did leave the scene of an accident. The problem is this. They wanted to perform a drug test. And this is right away. It's like right after I came in. Right away. The problem is I had a lot in my system. I may have even, did I buy cocaine too? I want to say not that time. But I had benzos. I had benzos and opiates and all kinds of stuff in my system. Now, the one thing about all of that is I think it probably, if this all happened again, because this is some big evidence too, if you just get arrested for, you ran a red light, you didn't have insurance, you left the scene, you had a hypodermic on you, but they did not consider that as necessarily a crime because you had a hypodermic on you, okay? Here's where they got me. The judge says, they got me into a judge pretty fast. We want to see a urine test. And she said it's court ordered that you have to submit to a urinalysis. Well, no, you don't. Look, they may say, well, we're going to hold you until you have to pee, and then we're going to get that pee. I've been through situations like that, far worse, in the future from this point in time. It was in the future. And I know good and well, if they say, you're going to give us this, and you're going to go here until you do. Now, they do have extraction methods if they really want something from you, from your body, that may or may not be in your body. They do have methods, and there's ways around them. But submitting to a drug test? When you've only come in for the three infractions that I mentioned. How wise was that? Because that put me where I copped to a plea of it, because it was under the influence. I ran a red light under the influence. Now, I didn't cause any bodily harm. I did bang up that car. And by the way, that person never got paid from me, and they never the city of Gary never pursued it against me. Tell me that the state, the federal government, the municipalities aren't doing business. They're doing business because they're going to get their money out of you, their money, the money they charge you for fees, whatever. They're going to get that out of you. They're going to take that out of your hide. Is the so-called victim, the purported victim, are they going to get anything? More times than not, they don't. Because, you know what I'm going to say. The Fed, the state, the county municipalities, they're doing business. And so what happened was I ended up in City of Gary's drug court program, which was like a breeze. It's like a breeze, man. In fact, not long after this, I ended up in Porter County's drug court program. And what they did was they just they shipped all the charges, in a sense, over to Porter County, and I ended up entering into their drug court program. Porter County, Indiana. That was not a breeze. That was pretty tough. And that went for 2 years. 2 years of my life, I was in that program. From the beginning of March 2009 to February 28th or 9th. Was it a leap year? Maybe. 2011. Boy, that was something, though. Being in that Gary City jail for that time. And I mean, there's a lot more things that happened that I could go into that I won't now. Because a lot of this really has to do with interacting with police, judges, the courts. What are they after? What things are good for you to do? What things are not? Listen, anybody listening to this knows the legal aspects of being demanded that you provide them with a urine sample when you're incarcerated. If anybody knows the legal aspects to that, because I don't, off my head, I'm not going to do an internet search right now. And it could vary from place to place to place to place. Let me know. Because, look, if I would have told them, no, I don't consent, could they have forced me? I mean, how are they going to get the pee from me? Even if they put me in a dry cell. A dry cell is a place where they're going to put you to try, like I just said, to try to extract something from you. It's usually through your poop. How are they going to get my pee? It's just a thought. But, you know. Hindsight. But the thing is, I'd never want to be in that situation again. I'd never want to see anybody in that situation. And the problem is so many innocent people who are either entirely innocent of accusations and charges or mostly. Unfortunately, they end up doing business with the state. And once you get into doing business with the state, federal, local, once you get into doing business with them, they're going to see it through. They're going to see it through, and they're going to make sure that they come out on top. Bad situation. Real bad. So with that, I'm going to end part 2 of talking to the cops, and I'm probably going to have to do a part 3. I will be doing, other things like getting back to the briefs, and of course, we're still on for the first Their Story propaganda live stream the first Saturday of October. Everything seems to be just fine for that. Okay, so till then, hope everybody takes care of themselves and others, and I'll see you then.